This is depressing to them to see it, and they don't really understand why, and they feel that if this war is not fought over there, it will be fought over here, because those people, the Viet Cong and the people whoever it is backing them, they feel that they're going to win.
You've had a very good chance to see reaction in foreign countries practically around the globe. You just returned last night
Yes.
to Houston. What is the feeling about student demonstrations against the U.S. and Vietnam and the burning of draft cards and that type of thing?
I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding as to why that should happen. I think most of the serious thinkers believe that the strength of it is overestimated, that this does not really represent the attitude of the American people. They feel that students have a right to demonstrate. They've had demonstrations in their own lands, but they do not feel that this represents the fundamental policy of the American people. That is to say, they feel that the American people are behind the government in its policy. And for instance, we were leaving Korea and our plane was delayed for some time in getting out of the airport because of Korean planes taking their own soldiers to Vietnam. And they were saying to us over and over again, the United States was helpful to us during the war. We'll be loyal to the United States now. We want to have a part in this conflict.
Well, I think they're indicative of the deep discontent and frustration over this terribly futile, bloody, costly, and unjust war in Vietnam. And I'm absolutely convinced that if this war isn't brought to an end, we're going to see more of these anti-war demonstrations and anti-draft demonstrations. I happen to be a strong believer in one moving on the basis of conscience, and those who are protesting at this point are protesting on the basis of conscience. Many of them are conscientious objectives, and certainly this is a right guaranteed by the Constitution through the Selective Service Act, and I would be the first to endorse their right as well as their moral responsibility to do what they're doing on the basis of their conscience.
Well, Mr. McIlvaine, we decided when I received this letter from my brother in Vietnam, stating of the apathy and the disconcertion of the Negro GI there, you know, I'm kind of sick of the communist-inspired hate groups which hide behind black power slogans and the card-burning cowards who don't want to go to Vietnam. Well, I've asked Mr. Jimmy Newsom, the Lively Ones, and Miss Hetty Loy, if they would go to Vietnam, and this is what we desire to do. We want to go there and take a personal message to the fellas there that we're with them in life.
How do you think your group could do a better job than, let's say, some of the other groups that are now touring Vietnam?
Well, in the sense that we are the fellas next door. We are the guys that were raised with them. They are pros in their own rights, but we are people from home, and I think the psychological effect would be tremendous.
We don't have any program. We're a draft counseling organization. We don't advocate any particular position in regard to the draft.
What kind of counseling do you provide then?
Well,
in terms of examples?
it's mostly purely factual. The procedure on how to obtain various classifications, the best way to convince the local board of your sincerity, of the fact that you qualify for a particular classification, of course with an emphasis on one of the due conscientious objector classifications. A great deal of what I do should be done by Selective Service itself, but they simply will not or cannot provide the information.
What do you think about these demonstrators against the Vietnam issue, and do you think they're hindering the progress in the United States now?
Well, I can only answer that from the viewpoint of the boys, some of the boys that we talked with when we were in Vietnam, the fall before last, when we went over there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And most of them, I talked with some of the boys, I said, how do you feel about the demonstrations at home and the race riots and all of these things? And they, almost to a boy, they would say, well, at first it made us awful mad over here because of what we're going through over here, and said it made us so mad we don't know what to do, but said now we just ignore it because we know what we have to do over here, you know. And they saw a reason for our being over there. And who knows the real answer to this thing? I mean, I feel sorry for anyone who has to make the decisions, honestly. But as far as burning our American flag, to me, that's almost treason, and I can't understand how anybody is allowed to stomp on the American flag. I get very excited. I mean, I can get up on a stump and really go on this thing because I don't appreciate it, because I think we have the greatest country that has ever been because of our principles, and there's certain people that are trying to knock down prayer and belief in God and whittle away at our Constitution to where we have nothing left, absolutely nothing left. And, I mean, I take a real dim view of it myself.
From your wounds in Vietnam, what are your feelings about the people that are protesting the war today?
Well, I don't think there should be protests.
Why don't you think there should be?
Because we lost too many men in Vietnam to pull out now.
You think we should fight it to the end then?
Now, since we're in part, I think we should fight it to the end.
I think many guys want to come back to the world, I mean,
United States.
to the United States, and well, I think it's not worth it fighting in Vietnam.
Pedro, how do you feel about the protest against the war today?
Well, I feel that it's good, and the government was too good, because we're supposed to be here.
You don't think we're supposed to be in Vietnam?
No,
Do you think the protest is hurting the morale of the soldiers in Vietnam?
no, it did not.